going to get to look at some things that are already well known to exist, and I'm going to let you just think about them. The first is menhirs, which are standing stones. I want you to bear in mind that the height of a human being is only a little bit taller than where the top of the shadow is in this photograph. These are enormous, enormous stones. Do you think that maybe these enormously tall stones were built for a reason? Do you think that maybe these ancient peoples were putting them there because they got something out of it? Is it merely a religious symbol? Or was it put there because it had a technological usefulness? Do they put these headstones over your grave because it's just decorative? Or are they hoping that the headstone is going to have some sort of energetic effect that will keep your body preserved and usher you on into the afterlife? Can these stones actually create ripples of energy that will rise our frequency of consciousness, that will make us feel better, that will make us healthier, that will make everything around us more harmonious? If you think about the possibility that these stones could be put into position and change the way that your mind works, then you're thinking in the right direction. They're enormous, and it would be a lot of work to do that just for some religious symbolism. It would be much more apropos to believe that people would go to all this trouble if they could use it for something. Next thing we're going to look at is dolmens. These are stone cellars. What if you were able to build a little stone cellar, a little stone structure, get inside of it and have it harness energy so that while you're sitting in there you meditate and it raises your vibration. It raises the consciousness frequency of your mind while you're inside. And all you have to do is sit under this absolutely colossal stone that if it fell would crush you flat instantaneously. Very precariously. This is Kilclooney in Ireland. Look at that thing. Look at how that gigantic stone that weighs more than 2 18-wheelers, at least, if not much more, if that little guy were to just fall off of the tips of the other stones, he would crush you flat. And yet there he is, and with all the earthquakes and with all the earth changes that have gone on, it's still balanced precariously right up there. And here's another one, balanced precariously. Why would they go to so much trouble? Do you really think a bunch of guys are just going to do this because it's cool? Do you really think they'd go to the trouble of getting themselves crushed and trying to precariously balance these very, very massive stones just because it's a fun thing to do? I don't think so. In this case, you see that actually part of the stone is broken off and fallen onto the ground, but the point is the same. The point is, look at what's going on there. You go underneath, you meditate, and you get charged up. Now this is an example of a more advanced structure where a wall is built around you. And once you go inside that wall, you now have a much, much higher energetic charge. And you got a little breathing hole. This is another one from the side. Wouldn't you like to know? No, actually I did this in a rush and I don't know where all these locations are, but it's easy to find online. Just look for dolmens. And you'll go to Google Pictures, Google Images, Google dolmen, the word dolmen, D-O-L-M-E-N, you'll start finding these things. Barrows is the next thing. Barrows are mounds. The idea here is that you actually drill a hole into the ground underneath the mound. There is a round chamber inside the mound. This is well known. You go in there and you have a little party and you meditate. It's enough now that you can bring in a group of people. It does the same thing as a dolmen, except you're burrowing into the earth now. So here's some barrows. And this one, of course, you see how well structured it is, Silbury Hill being the biggest one. Now here's one of the entrances, which of course the English government has been kind enough to put iron bars in front of it so you can't go in there. They don't want you to be able to use this technology anymore. And they're probably worried about finding condoms and stuff inside, frankly. But that's not what it's built for necessarily. Maybe it was. Some of these barrows are longer, and you also have the mound builders in the U.S. You have all these other things like Serpent Mound in Ohio that you can go to and see this in the U.S. I'm only doing the English ones right now. Henges is the one that everybody's so familiar with and everybody loves, because now you get standing stones like the single ones you were seeing before, except now there's certain areas where the energetics are so high that long rows of stones are being put together because it's going to be even more powerful. The sheep really like being near these stones. In fact, animal life really can feel this more than we can. These were not put there by accident. And again, in this case, you have a combination of a barrow and a henge. You have the henge at the front here, and if you go through that path down the middle, you go into the barrow, and you go inside and you meditate. Maybe the henge in the front helps focus the energy that's flowing through the center of the barrow. Here's another henge out there just hanging out in the middle of the English countryside, and there's some of them are in France, some of them are in Germany. They're in Ireland too. They're all over the place. Here's another one. Of course, here's another one. Here's another example. One of the most impressive, which unfortunately has been lost to the ravages of time to a large degree, is Avebury. Now, what you're going to see here, if you look closely, is that all of these different stones, all of these different little dots that you see as you go along here represent individual stones. This looks like a giant serpent. Here's the head. And here's what it's eaten in its stomach. If you look up at the top in the middle there, there's two little rings of stones inside. That represents the meal, and then here's the tail down at the bottom. Down here is one of the barrows. This is Silbury Hill, the best barrow of all, the most famous one and the most well-structured one. Look at the geometry. Look at how it's a perfect equilateral triangle between the head of the snake, the tail of the snake, Silbury in the middle, and then here's the area up here. Now what this was for, this was a gigantic technology. This is a machine. It's a machine that's built based on, if you look around it, the contours of the mountains, the contours of the land, so that a bunch of people get inside this area right here and they have a big party and they all meditate and chant and run around and do fun stuff. And they're changing consciousness for themselves and for the planet. That's what this stuff was built for. It's a consciousness technology. Of course, Stonehenge being the greatest example of all, these sarsen stones, as they're called, are gigantic in size and very beautiful to look at. What you may not realize is that at one time there was a whole ring of them like this. That's what it used to look like, and all the stones that have fallen have been identified in the soil, because the more they fall down over time, the more that it rains each year, they fall further and further into the ground, but they've all been found. So this is known to be true. I'm not making this up. What we know is that Stonehenge was used to identify solstices and when the moon and the sun were traveling and what would happen, because during certain planetary alignments, certain times of the year, these zones on the Earth became much more energetically active. Are these ancient structures connected? The answer is yes, through the science of ley lines. This was done by Sir Alfred Watkins. And we're going to talk a little bit about him. He found in the 1920s that ancient holy sites lined up in straight lines, which he called leys. Sites from extremely different ages, millennia apart, were all aligned with one another. This includes the Neolithic Age, which is Stone Age, the Bronze Age, the Iron Age, and the Christian era. Now, he would use this camera to basically be able to look across long distances and see if things were in a straight line. Now, what you see here is the summary of a massive amount of research that he did. What you see here is every single one of these words is a different ancient sacred site. Nobody ever comes out in the open and says, oh, by the way, all these sacred sites are built in a straight line. It took a guy like Alfred Watkins to analyze this and discover it for himself. But guess what a lot of these things are? They're cathedrals. You think that maybe the Knight Templars knew that there was something going on? Do you think that maybe they knew to build on that line and not to build off the line? Do you think that maybe if you build a church which acts as a funnel for this consciousness energy, that if you build that domed roof for the church out of stone over that line, that it's going to harness more of this energy field from the universe, and that in so doing, it's going to become a resonator so that when you go to church, you're going to be experiencing a revelation, a higher consciousness? Do you think that maybe the stained glass window and the Gregorian chant music are creating harmonics that help you harmonize with the field? Absolutely. So here's some people from his Stonehenge club, the straight track club as it was called, the ley line hunters. Here's a barrow that had trees growing around it. Here's a similar ring of trees without a barrow. This is a natural earth effect caused by these energy fields because they do have circular formations. Well, it is a hyperdimensional effect. These are harnessing hyperdimensional energy because the hyperdimensional energy is what makes the matter that is building the stones. Let me say that again. The matter that makes these stones, the stone